Good morning, guys. My name is Jonathan Blackburn. I will be hosting the webinar today on VORTEK Spaces. Try to move that. It's a little bit sunny here in the window. So I guess we'll start right now. So like today's webinar is on advanced lighting features. And also I'll give out some video tricks on how to optimize your projects. So, most of you probably have attended the previous webinars that were out in July and early of August. So basically today what I'll do, I'll use the same project that we were using before. And from there, we'll just go and give some tricks on the lighting and reflections and all of that. And then after that, I just want to mention that we're using an application called Zoom. There's a chat window somewhere on your screen. So if you have any questions during the webinar, just let me know. You can go in the chat and use that for talking with me. I guess it's pretty early in the morning. We're still waiting for a couple more people, but what I'll do, I'll still start, and I'm recording the session. I'll try to put it available after on YouTube or something like that. So if people are missing some parts, you can always rewatch it after. So what I'll do now, I'll just start sharing my screen like that. So now you should be seeing my VORTEK Spaces screen. In here, as you can see, this is the same project that I had last week, but no lights have been added or optimized. There's only one light that came from the Cabinet Vision project. Before I start playing with the lights in Spaces, I just want to repeat some of the little details that I gave out last week. Since this is a webinar that is more focused on the lighting features. So always try to put a ceiling and a floor in your rooms. Also try to close the walls as much as possible. And mainly because if you want to use the sunlight, it will look a lot better if all the walls are closed. Same thing, because if you look around and try to move around that room, if you've got a wall that is just an open to the outside, it will look weird. Maybe you'll just have to always try to figure out your view angle so it doesn't look on the outside. So sometimes it's just not as good to do it like that. So like I said, close the walls, ceiling. It's just one click. It doesn't really take long. Then after that, it doesn't really have to do anything with the lighting. But as far as decoration goes, on this project, I've got quite a lot. This is a project I use for demonstration. So I kind of, get over myself just decorating the project. But in most jobs, if you just add 1 or 2, 3 items inside your project, what I do, I do have a catalog inside my Cabinet Vision where I keep most of my decoration items. I've got a kettle, I've got some utensils, I've got, a couple of bottles and things like that I've imported from SketchUp. Some other ones that come directly from the Cabinet Vision catalog that is built in. So if you just add a couple of objects, it will add a lot of life to the project and make it look a lot more real. So now if I go, in this project, what I've done is so far is just exporting it to Spaces, and then I've just started picking on the materials. So we'll start talking about the lights. Then I'll also talk about some different features like the emissive materials, like how to get better reflections and things like that. So first, regarding the lighting, when I click on my light button, now I'll be seeing there's one light that was already placed in my Cabinet Vision, so it's already there. When I put my lights in my project, I always like to separate my lights in what I call the utilitarian lights and also the ambience lighting. So what I always try to do is start with the positions in the room where there should be a light, or where you would be expecting to see a light effect on the wall, or if you've got, for example, puck lights on the ceiling or things like that, maybe you want to see a beam of light on the wall, things like that. So normally I'll just go and start by adding a couple of key lights, and I don't add all my lights and then start adjusting. I normally just go and add a couple that will be either doing the same thing, or and then I'll adjust them, and then after that I'll go around and start adding more lights. So sometimes people just go around and add 30 lights and then start adjusting them, but it gets just a little bit more confusing. So for example, like really often myself, what I like to do is to have that light here and the light that I put over the sink to be the same one. In most cases, like the same effect would be used in both places pretty easily. So what I'll do now, I'll just go and add a light right there over my sink, because this is really where like there will most likely be a light there on top of the sink inside of this kitchen. So what I'll do, I'll click on this light and then use Control on my keyboard to add this light to my selection. So now they're both selected at the same time. And from here, I can go and play with the intensity. I can play with the range. You see in the beginning, since those two lights, they don't have the same range or angle. This is why you see like the light that is blue on both sides. It just weirds like that. It's not a bug or anything. It's really meant like that because they don't have the same settings. So you see exactly what was changed. So for example, I could just go and change the intensity on both lights, but still leave the range to be different on the two lights. So in this case, I'll just want to have exactly the same range, same intensity. You know, like regarding the intensity of the light, like the standard intensity should be 1. You know, like the 1 number, it should be like just like the normal intensity of the light. So in special cases, you want to go over that. Some others you want to go a little bit less than that. But the 1 is the number for like just the normal or like medium light. And then after that, the range here. You see, it's pretty much in meters. So like, for example, like here, the number you see like 4, it's like 4 meters from that light. It might sometimes look a little bit different than that, but that's actually what that number means there. So it's always interesting to know. So sometimes, you know, if I go and put my light there, now I've just put it at 4, so now it will reach my my floor. And then in this case, I'll just go and play with the angle again. For those two lights, like especially for the light underneath the hood, I always like to use the IES light profiles. Most likely those lights will have either halogen lights or actually you don't really see that anymore. I guess it's all LED lights. But in this case, I'll still use that. And also what I'll do is that for those two lights, I'll just go and bring the temperature just a bit warmer. You know, it's always a good idea to play with different temperature lighting in your rooms. When you do that, it creates some different colors in the shadows and also in the reflections of the components. So that's it for those lights. So now what I'm done with those lights, I'll start adding like other types of lights. So let's say that I want to add like LED lights underneath those shelves here. So to do that, in spaces, we don't actually have like LED strips or things like that. So if I want to give the effect of a LED light, what I'll do, I'll just go and add a couple of lights that will be just a bit closer to each other, but you don't need to put one every inch. You know, it's just like an overkill, and it will slow down your graphic card as well when you do that. So in this case, I'll just go and add one light here, and probably just 2 will be enough. And I can also use the shortcut on my keyboard, the L button. So if I click on L, now I can add more lights. In this case, since I want to add a couple of lights, they will all do the same job, basically. So what I'll do, I'll just go and add them all at the same time, so I can adjust them all at the same time after that. In this case, here. And basically now what I'll do, I'll just go and select one of those lights. And when I do that, since all those lights have the same exact height level, they will all be grouped together. And I'll use Control to go and select the ones that are right here in my selection. So if I want to give out the LED or the Del effect, first thing I'll do, I'll just go and make my temperature a little bit colder. So it's more like a bluish type of light, or like a very bright white. Then I'll go and switch those lights to a spotlight, actually from a spot to a point light. So when I do that, now it becomes a ball of light. So the difference between the spot and the point is really that the spot is start from a small point and it goes wider as it goes down. Then the point light would be more like a ball of light that will emit lights in all the different direction. So when I do that with those lights, since this is like a LED, what I'll do, I'll just bring my range like very, very short. to my shelf, and especially in most cases, like those LED lights, like they will not be emitting light all the way down to like to the floor, for example. So in this case, I'll just bring my range very short, so it's a very like localized light. And in this case, I can probably just increase the intensity just a little bit, since the range is that short. Also, there's something I don't know if you guys can notice. Actually, oops, sorry about that. Just click on the wrong button. Just realized the other day there's an option that should make it look way better on your side. So in this case here, we see some kind of like a weird shape on the wall. That will happen sometime when you use a point light that will be very close to the wall. It's like the simpler way to explain it is a double reflection of the light. So if you want to remove that effect from that light there, all you need to do is here take the shadow type and switch it to a hard. So when you do that, it will just remove that effect there. Like that. So you see now it looks pretty good for those lights. And then after that, I'll go and add a couple of lights here on the table. So like the lights that I'll add on the top of the table here, I'll try to add them right there in the, right where my light bulb is. When I do that, like I actually don't even need to be exactly where it should be. It can just click right there, especially because in this case, like those are transparent light. So like the light will go through the through the glass, so it won't really matter. Otherwise, like you might want to just click them and move them around. So like to move those lights around, you just click on them. Again, like just the same way as before, when you have a group of light and you start moving them, you'll see like they will both move at the same time. So in this case, when I go and move the lights, there's 3 arrows. So each of these arrows will make it move in one direction only. So like that, it just slides in one direction. The other way around here, just in height, and then like from side to side. And then when you use those squares like that, the square will make it move in 2 different planes. So like that, you see it goes up and then kind of left and right. And then here it will go up and then in the other direction. Also, something that is quite nice is that even if the light, for example, goes through the ceiling, you will always see those tools around. So like that might happen sometime when you click it. For some reason, you might just send it like very, very far away. So if that happens, at least you still see those tools around. So you should see them through the cabinets. In this case, you see right now, like this light is in the right position, but the other one is not perfect. So what I'll do, I'll just hit Control on my keyboard to remove this one from my selection. Now I can go and click only on this one. And now I'll just use the yellow line to move it around. Again, in this case, what I'll do, like since like that type of light should go like all around, I'll switch those 2 lights to a point light. Like that, so point light. And again, I'll probably like just play with the range. Again, with the range, like it's always better if you try to go like a little bit far away when you try to set up your lights, especially when it's like main lights like that, because sometimes like it might look very good from very close, but like you're kind of scrapping everything you've done on the other side. There is one setting in Spaces called it's called the eye adaptation tool. And the eye adaptation tool, what it does, it kind of really helps by cheating the overall lighting of the room. So it always readjusts the overall lighting, so it looks pretty good in every situation. So this is something that is a very, very good tool, because it's allowing us to be quite lazy when we set up the lights, and it will always look pretty good. But if you're like very close to like from one light, what happens with the eye adaptation is that when you're into like, for example, I'll just go and make that one very bright. So you see, like for example, like when I do that and I put one place very bright, what it does is that the darkest part will become darker. And that's really what the eye adaptation tool will do. And if I take those lights and just like bring down the intensity very quickly, actually like not even quickly, like if I go down like that, you see like the software is always readjusting like the overall level of the room as I go down. So you see basically that's what the eye adaptation tool does. So like, oh, like otherwise, if we didn't have that and I was doing that exact same thing with those lights, everything would just become like a big bright white nothing. So like this is a very, very nice tool, but it can also play tricks on the projects. So like that, you see, like I can just bring those lights a bit more, a bit less. I've got my range now with those lights. And then from there, what I can do as well is like those are pretty much what I call my utilitarian lights. So what I'll do, I'll just add what I call like an ambient light. So with the ambient light, it's a light I will try to put, like sometimes in this case, I could probably put it like right there. So like the trick to place that light that I always like to give is where I would stand, you know, just to take a look at the kitchen. And the idea with the light that we'll place here is basically that it's just like an ambience lighting. So it will send the light forward in all direction. So what I'll do, I'll just go and add it. So instead of talking about it, so I'll click here, then I'll turn that light to a point light, and then I'll bring it up. And as you can see, like when I do that, especially if you look on the oven, for example, it'll create some reflections on the panels as well. Now suddenly, like that panel looks like a high glass panel because there's more lights into it. You know, like all the lights in spaces, this is what will like basically wake up the textures. Oh, I didn't realize I have a second light here. So yeah, so those lights, like this is really what wakes up the texture. So for example, like if I look at this table, right now, like you can see like the texture of it, you can see the wood grain. Not all the textures have wood grain on it, but some of the elements will have wood grain, some of the flooring, some of the like textures will have like different light maps that will make the light reflect in different ways around it. So like back to that ambient light. So like I said, what I'll do, I'll just go and place it there. When I add this light around in my room, it also creates a little bit more shadows. You see like around those chairs. So it just makes it look a little bit more real still. So like the more shadows, like the more reflections, this is when like the project will look a little bit more real. Then that's pretty much it. Oh, like maybe this one, there's one light inside that, that lamp here. So I could, for example, just change it for a point light and exchange my rate. But in this case, it will probably just like make a big white circle on the ceiling. So probably not really nice. So what I'll do, I'll just like leave it like that. Then after, what I wanted to show is something called the emissive materials. The emissive material is basically, it's not an actual light, it's just a material that looks like it's bright. So what I'll do, I'll just go and select, for example, just this part, like the lampshade there, and I'll show you how to create one. This is something you can go and start from pretty much any materials, but myself, I really like to have one in my appliance category. So if you go in the appliance category and go and click on the white material, click on edit current material. Now it will open like a small window there where you can create your own material. So I always like to just call it like emissive white. And then here, like for like smoothness, you can change it to whatever you want. Like the smoothness, just to remind people about it. Like this is how shiny the material will look. So you see, like if I go and change it, like the reflection now, it's like very just like glass. Now it's more matte. So in this case, since it's a lampshade, I probably want to bring my smoothness to pretty much 0. But like the important part is the emission. So emission, you'll see like when I start moving that around, just looks like now it's bright. So even if I was to turn off like all the lights in the project, like this lampshade will always look very, very bright. So this is the same thing, for example, if I want to have like a LED strip like effect, if I really wanted to see that LED strip, you could just go and add a part in Cabinet Vision and just modify that material to something that you call like an emissive material. So like this is something that is very nice. And once you apply it, then it's saved in your library and you can always use it. And you know, this is a reason why I always like to save it directly in my appliance category. So it's always like very close by, very quick access, because this is the category where I pick all my stainless steel and chrome and all of that. So now that's it for the lights, emissive materials. And then Oh yeah, like reflection probes. So like a lot of you guys have seen, and this is something that appeared probably a couple of months ago, maybe back in April. Those light probes, the reflection probes, those are like chrome balls. And when you get like very close to it, what you'll see is basically just a reflection of the whole room. And that chrome ball is just like the best physical explication that we could find to explain people how the reflection probe works. So, you know, with VORTEK spaces, we use the same types of technologies as like the video game industry to calculate reflections. You know, like, so when I go around and I look at the reflections that I see in my countertop, for example, those reflections are not perfectly aligned. Sometimes you'll see with the other cabinets. It kind of tricks the eye of the person that looks at the video, thinking that the reflection, you know, like your brain sees reflection and doesn't really understand that it's not perfectly aligned at that point. You know, if you stop and start looking at those details, you will realize that something doesn't work. But otherwise, when you just move around, like people will just see that that countertop is very glossy, so it works pretty good. But basically, what you see in those reflection is just like if that chrome ball was taking a picture of everything around it and then projecting that picture on all the objects. So like to demonstrate that, what I'll do, I'll just click on that ball here, and then I can move it when I click on the little cross there. And then you see, like if you watch, for example, like here in the stainless steel, when I start moving that light around, you see like all the reflections will get updated. So you see right now, like I'm getting very close to the table where it's very bright, and now all my reflections in my oven will be a lot more brighter. If I bring it, for example, like underneath the table, you see now it will change to something completely different. And even more than that, if I was to bring it, for example, like outside the project, like that. Oh, actually, right now it's just white outside, but let's see add a skybox there. So I guess it didn't work as much as I thought it would, but still. So basically, with those probes, also what will happen sometimes is that, for example, if that probe was to be like behind a wall where like it doesn't see anything or it's very dark, then all the reflections would be kind of weird. I don't know why I cannot get it to do that, but. Yeah, I guess it's probably because of all the lights in my projects. But yeah, so basically sometimes when you open a project and you put stainless steel, like we can see it a little bit here. For example, like the stainless steel like, is very dark because what's being reflected by that probe is just like a very dark wall. Same thing, yeah, we can see it pretty good now. So you see like because that probe is just in a dark room, it's just projecting a very dark reflections on all those objects, even the one that are like very far away. So this is the same reason, for example, when you put a mirror, sometimes you'll see what's on the other room because the probe is in the other room. This is what's being projected there. So, oops, I'll just go back and pick it, move it back here. Like that. And, you know, like talking about the probe, what I've done also, just to show a little bit more, I'll just go and take that wall there. I didn't put that frame just to do a nice publicity of VORTEK spaces, but I just placed it there so I could put a mirror. So, for example, you know, like talking about reflections, having a mirror is probably the best thing. So if I go and look inside a mirror right now, what I'm seeing, it's not what's directly behind me. It's really what's in front of that reflection probe. So again, I'll go and find that probe. And if I go and look, like what's being reflected is that fridge there, because this is what it sees on this side. So if I go here in that probe, you see right now I see the fridge with the two handles. So like this is really how like the reflection works. So like for mirrors, for example, if you want to achieve the best effect with the mirror, what you need to do with that probe is to bring it like as close as you want as close as you can from that mirror. And you see, like, when I go and place myself here, like you see right now, like what you see in that probe is basically what's being reflected inside the mirror right now. So you see, you can move it around, you can place it there. So when you do that, basically you're just adjusting like that, like the reflection in that, like that. And also, you know, like the reason why those reflections look fuzzy like that in the mirror, it's because of the resolution. And mainly, you know, like I said before, like when you see those reflections, your brain doesn't really get that they're not perfectly aligned. And one of the reason it doesn't get it, it's because those reflections are fuzzy or blurry like that. If they were like very, very sharp and very crisp, then you would instantly realize that it doesn't fit there, or the size or the dimension of the object in the mirror is not, it's closer than they appear, for example. So like having like reflections like that, this is really one goal of just making your drawing look nicer than if it was with real reflections. But I can tell you though, like in the one of the next update of VORTEK Spaces, we're actually testing right now like different new features for the reflection that will be absolutely awesome. So this is it for reflection probes and the mirrors at the same time. Then also, you know, like for the lights, as I mentioned before, like you don't need to put like 500 lights in a project. I see people that put like way too many lights, and in those cases, when you have too many lights, like we often they kind of killed the effect of the other light around. So, you know, like if like in this case, you know, I probably have like 10 lights in that whole project, and it already looks like pretty good right now. It's also a little bit too bright, but because of that eye adaptation tool, it still looks like very good. And by making it just a bit too bright like that, I get a little bit darker shadows as well inside the project. Also, when I'm done adjusting my lights, what I do normally is to go on the second button here with the ambient intensity and just lower it a bit or readjust it. And as you can see right now, because my project is just like very well lit, when I bring it down, it almost makes no difference in the project, except in that very corner there. So what I'll do, I'll just bring it like it was pretty much like that. Then the sunlight is something that makes like a very nice effect in the project. This is as soon as you can add sunlight in a project, do it. It looks beautiful when you do that. It adds a lot of realism, a lot of reflections as well. In this case, what I'll do, I'll just go and crank my skybox exposure here and turn it around a little bit like that. And now I'll go and play with the light with the sun. So with the sun, like really often what I'll do, I'll just crank the intensity just a little bit. So it's very easy to find out like when you turn it around. In this case, you know, I'll go and try to set it up, and it's, you know, 360 degrees. So if you go from one side to the other, like you go like full circle. And from there, I'll just go and play with the elevation. When I do that with my sun, you know, I always try to get as many parts or as many pieces as possible, because like that, it you know, it really looks very beautiful, real. Also bring down the temperature just a little bit to make it look a little bit warmer, like that. So this is it with the sunlight now. Then after that, the skyboxes, you know, like the skyboxes, they will affect what's called like the sun shaft. The sun shaft is when you look at the sun coming like at the window. I'll go and just crank the setting right now so you can see a little bit more of it. Sun shaft is right here. So you see right when I crank the viewing angle. So like the sun shaft is really like something that you see there. It's kind of like the beam of light you see. But that is being affected by the skybox. So you see like when I turn it around. So, you know, sometimes people will just have a project and they don't see any of this sun shaft, and that's mainly because of the skybox sometimes. And if the skybox is too dark, then you won't see it as well either. Also, by making it a bit darker like that, you know, this is one trick that I use all the time to make it look like it's night. And when I do that, you know, even if it's night, normally I don't turn off the sunlight. And you might say, yeah, it's night. There's no sunlight. Normally what I'll do with the sunlight, if I want to make it look like it's in the evening, I'll just bring down the intensity just a bit and the temperature like even way lower. So now it looks more like a street light, or you know, like an evening light or something like that. So it looks like very, very nice. And most of the skyboxes like that, you see like when you bring down the exposure, it really looks like night after that. So like that. Then now I want to talk a little bit about the video recording. So video recording, this is really what differentiate Spaces from any other tools. Since you're a customer now, it is differentiating you from most of the other companies out there. So recording videos, sharing videos is something that is very nice selling tool first, but also a really nice publicity tool for your company. So when you create those videos, the important thing is to make sure that that video is not too long, it's not too short. So always try to aim, you know, like the secret length on YouTube is normally 1.5 minutes. So if like the total length of your video is 1.5 minutes, then you've done a good job. So unless maybe you have like a very bigger projects or things like that. Normally when I set up my viewpoints, and this is something I was doing, I guess, in the beginning, and the mistake that I see a lot of people doing, like don't try to start your videos like entering the door. You know, this is like when you do that, it means like the first view that you see is not something very nice. So when I start my visit normally, and especially like this is something that will help you with your views on YouTube as well, but like the first screen that you see normally will be you know, it will be the image that you have also on your thumbnail. This is what people like will click when you see it because they think it looks really nice. So normally with my first view, I'll just try to go and find one of the views I would like to save for my rendering. So I'll just go and set up right here. And then from there, I'll go and start going around my room. There are a couple of like very like winning shots, I guess, when you record videos, and it's always try to pan around objects. Also, you know, like views where you have like the table like that right there, perfectly centered. It always looks like very, very nice to go around the objects. When you do that, also try to think about like where the next view will be. So like the head is not just like going from one side to the other all the time. Then in this case, I'll just go and add another point. Also, when you set up your points, and for example, if you want to have a point that looks here, and you want to have another one that looks here, normally you should always try to move on the floor, because otherwise, like the speed at which the camera goes from one point to the other is calculated by the distance in between the two different points. So in this case, since my 2 points are in the same position, only like different direction, when you look at the video at that point, it would just like turn like very, very quickly. So for example, like if I go and just go to this point, I'll press play to show you what happens. Like that. You see right now, like it turns just a bit too quickly. So instead of putting the point right there, what I will do, I'll just go and for example, like move around and just move myself a little bit to the right. Also, like if you want to slide like that from left to right, you just hold Shift on your keyboard and use the left and right arrows. This is like a very nice trick to go and move exactly in the same parallel line as I wanted. So in this case, I'll just press plus. Now, like this point number 4 is not relevant anymore. So if I want to delete it, I do a right click on that point and then click on delete. So now you see I've got 0.3 and 0.5 now. So like I can see, but you see now it's turning like more smoothly because it's moving around at the same time. So in this case, pardon me. Then after that, like maybe I want to put like a point like that about the island. You know, it's always good try to go around the objects and make like very nice wide views. When you do that, try to back up a little bit, because otherwise in between the 2 points, you might be just a bit too close from the object. You see right now, like it's just cutting a little bit on the bottom. Also, when you set up those points, like it's a very good idea because it's not just a rendering thing. In typical rendering, you would want to have like a view where you're a little bit lower than the eyes, and then just take it so it looks a little bit bigger and wider. But with videos, it's very easy to go up also and take like very different types of views. And when you do that, it makes the whole room like look very big because you're having like a very high view. This is basically higher than anybody will ever be, I guess, in this project, in this actual kitchen when it gets built. So adding a couple of views where you go up, where you look down at the floor, so you see a little bit more about the space between the countertop and the cabinets, for example. So I guess like those are like very winning shots. Also, for example, when you go around the island, as much as you want to focus on the island, always try to have also, at the same time, a really nice view of whatever's behind it, because like those people, they want to stand there and look at the people sitting in the kitchen when they prepare all the meals. So like adding those views, like this is really something that makes a really nice difference. Also about, dreaming about that project, that bloom that I have here in my settings. The bloom here is adding some kind of like a cloud effect on anything that is very bright inside the project. So that's why it's always on by default. It adds some kind of just like a cloudy thing on objects, so it looks a little bit more real when you go around. And then finally, regarding those viewpoints, the speed at which you go in between the points is very important. If you go too slow, then it becomes, it means first your video will be a little bit too long, and it might be boring, and people might even skip some parts inside the video, which you really don't want to happen. If you record too slow as well, it will take, if you go 2 times slower, it will take double time to record the video. So this is another reason why you don't really want to go too slow when you record your video. So like my go-to speed will be like between 0.3 and 0.5. So 0.3 is a bit slower for smaller projects and things like that. And as soon as you go with just a little bit bigger project, you can go at 0.5. And the bigger project you go, then I guess like, you can go a little bit faster as well. So in this case, I'll just keep my 0.5. When I go recording, I want to just talk about those video settings again. So if I go here in video and photo, resolution, so we have 720p all the way up to 4K. If you don't have a good enough graphic card, you might not see 2K and 4K there. If you do have a good graphic card, or if you think that you have a good graphic card and you still don't see those two options, just shoot me an email. I'll take a look at it. It might be a problem on our side. It could be also a setting that I can help you fix on your computer pretty quickly. The resolution that you will pick there will make a difference on the whole time it will take to record the video. But I always like to say that, for example, on a project like that, a kitchen like that, will probably take me like less than 10 minutes to record the whole thing in 4K resolution right now. So if I go 720, it will probably take me like 4 or 5 minutes. So it's half the time. But for 5 minutes more, I can get a very, very nice quality video. If you watch a 4K video on a 1080p TV, it will look nicer than if you watch a 1080p video on a 1080p TV as well. So because it will be scaled down. So I'm a little bit more technical right now. I don't know if everybody's into TV resolutions as much as I am, but then after we have the frame rate. Frame rate is the number of pictures it takes every second. So everybody knows that for a movie, it's just a bunch of pictures going around very, very quickly. For cinemas, it's 24 pictures every second. For us, it's 30 or 60. So when you pick 60 pictures every second. So it's much more than what you would see in cinemas. But still, if you go and take the difference between 30 and 60, like it's a huge difference in the quality of the output video. So you can use 30 if you want to do a draft, if you want just to do like a first shot to show something to someone. But if it's your presentation video, try to go and keep with the 60 hertz. Then after that, here we have the presented by. This is where you can change the name to put a company name or the designer name. And then here you can go and select the color of the name, it will appear at the beginning. There's also a little trick there. It's kind of a secret. I guess it's the first time I even mention it on on a webinar. But when you record a video and it says like presented by and everything, the font, right? The font that is built in the application is not a font that is installed by default on your computer, but it is a free font that you can install pretty easily online. So if you go and install that font, like all the beginning of your videos will just look a little bit nicer. I'll just type it here because I know sometimes my French Canadian pronunciation makes it sound weird, but so it's called like Fira or Fira. F-I-R-A. So if you download that font online, you'll see like all the beginning of your videos will look a lot better. If you didn't get that, just send me an email. Then I guess I can send you a bit more details. So that's pretty much it for what I wanted to show you guys today. Since we're live today at the same time, if you have any questions, now would be the time. If you want to use the chat window to ask me questions. So, and I guess I don't know why. Like, there's a lot of people that were supposed to be there and did not show up. So maybe it's too early in the morning. And this is something I didn't realize as well, that some parts of Australia, it's sort of been earlier than in Sydney. So sorry for my ignorance about that country. But now that I've been there, it's a lot easier. And like most of my next webinars will be set up 1 hour later, actually. If you want to attend any other webinars, you go on VORTEK Spaces, vortekexperience.com/webinars. And then you'll always have the new dates of the webinars. We keep adding them. So as soon as we're done with the webinars, we just create new ones and add new dates on that. So if I don't have any questions, I'll just call it a day for you, call it a night for me. And I'll wish you like a very good evening.